So Bellevue is massive, right? So let's just break it down real quick, right?
When I talk to folks about, hey, what about Bellevue? They're really asking because they've heard it's clean, it's safe, good schools, and they've got all of, the employers around there. A lot of tech people too tend to switch, employers more rapidly than, other industries historically. So, you might bounce from Google to Meta and back around, it's all right there.
And so as you move past Northwest Bellevue, then you get into the communities like Clyde Hill, Medina, Hunts Point, Yarrow Point. These are all where the billionaires live, essentially.
Why don't you talk about why Bellevue is really important now? Why are we even talking about Bellevue? Welcome to another episode of Seattle Living and Wealth Building. We're super excited about today's show. We're going to explore an area that is on what we call the East Side. And is it where people want to move to, and as they want to get away from the history and edginess of Seattle to the pristine neighborhood of Bellevue? We're going to unpeel all that and give you the real deal about what it's like in Bellevue, how it compares to Seattle, and also compared to those other East Side neighborhoods like Redmond, Kirkland. So Bellevue is massive, right? So let's just break it down real quick, right? We've got the usual suspects, Justin Day, Michael Dapper, no introduction needed, but let's start with, why don't you talk about why Bellevue is really important now? Why are we even talking about Bellevue?
So, Bellevue is important because in, the last 30 years, I'd say, there's been a huge boom in Bellevue, a lot of it tech driven. A lot of people are seeking to live on the East Side. The price point's higher, great schools, it's a great tech environment, and it is its own city. It's not just a suburb of Seattle. It's definitely important to know about Bellevue when you think about moving to the Northwest, for sure.
Yeah, when you think about what the Puget Sound offers, right? You've essentially got 4 hubs. You got Tacoma, you got Seattle, you got Everett, and Bellevue's obviously number 2 in that list, right? Mm-hmm. And so, what Bellevue's really known for is it's a huge tech hub. And so, a lot of people want to move close to where they're going to be working. I think a lot of actually, I'm not sure if you guys knew this or not, but Microsoft started in Bellevue before it even went into Redmond. And so I do feel like that kind of started a lot of what Bellevue has become today. And it's such a huge draw for the tech environment. And that's why it's such a wealthy, affluent community with prices where they are and the lifestyle that goes with that.
Yeah, all that's accurate. It's for sure changed a ton in the last 5 years, particularly, right, where there's been massive movement and exit from maybe downtown high rises, and we've seen companies like Amazon, who was 100% all in Seattle, suddenly start divesting from Seattle, downtown Seattle, and then investing in Bellevue. You've got other major employers there too, and then Bellevue, T-Mobile. What else do we have there?
T-Mobile, Meta, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, all the above.
Yeah,
and more.
Yeah, definitely a major tech hub, and it's grown tremendously. So what's the appeal of Bellevue compared to Seattle? Why?
Yeah. Well, I think that it's a preference, I'd say. So some people might like Seattle more, some people might like Bellevue more. People that tend to want to go to the East Side might be seeking a couple different things. One, Bellevue has its own police department. It's got its own municipality. It's its own government. So the way that Bellevue is run is a little bit different than Seattle. It's got excellent schools, great neighborhoods. I think that Bellevue, though, being a newer city and a smaller city, Bellevue right now I think is 150, 160,000 people. Seattle proper, metro Seattle area is 850, 900,000 people. So it is much smaller. But when I talk to folks about, hey, what about Bellevue? They're really asking because they've heard it's clean, it's safe, good schools, and they've got all of the employers around there. A lot of tech people too tend to switch employers more rapidly than, other industries historically. So, you might bounce from Google to Meta to Expedia, and back around, it's all right there. I think that it's a preference of kind of more of a suburban environment than Seattle's got a melting pot of everything.
Yeah, and so to clarify, I mean, we're going to talk a little bit about the different areas, of course, but downtown Bellevue has become such a huge economic impact in the Puget Sound, and I think it's the Freeman family that was who kind of developed a lot of what is known as downtown Bellevue now, and essentially everything that's kind of surrounding Bellevue Square. And I remember going to an event, this is probably 10, 12 years ago, where they were talking about how downtown Bellevue was, or how Bellevue as a whole was being developed. And one of the things that, a lot of people were against was the idea of light rail, and instead of improving the road infrastructure on the east side, and so it kind of just shows the differences in thought process between people who are looking to develop in Seattle versus in Bellevue. Obviously, the light rail has come over to Bellevue, which is certainly going to continue to be a bigger and bigger important part of its development. And we'll talk about that a little bit more as well. But I just feel like the way that they developed Bellevue was in a way that really focused on, okay, you could have that downtown style living, or you could go ahead and be in all these beautiful communities that surround downtown. And some of the communities like West Bellevue and Northwest Bellevue, I mean, you're talking some of the most beautiful properties around.
Yeah.
And you can live very, very close to your office, like walking distance to your office, and be in a $5 million house, right? That's not very common to see in many communities, anywhere in the U.S. So yeah, it just really makes it a really desirable place, especially for the affluent and people who are in the tech world that are, they're
well-paid tech workers.
Correct.
Essentially,
exactly.
is what you're saying, right?
And, well-paid, like you're talking the average income in Seattle is now just over $100,000, whereas in Bellevue, it's way north of that. I believe it's like 140 or 150 plus.
Your household income?
It is household income, yeah.
So it's significantly different from that perspective.
Yeah. And for context, right, Bellevue is a brand new city relatively, right? So
Correct.
Seattle has way more diversity. Of course, you're not going to get the same average household income. So Bellevue is essentially almost brand new. About 20 years ago, downtown Bellevue didn't have any high rises. And as Justin pointed out, it used to be just farmland, right? And so for the most part, farmland, other than the waterfront homes. So it's a completely different feel. If you like something new and clean and, less, I don't know, this is where it's kind of interesting. Some people might call it very boring. Depends on who you are and what your personality is. But Bellevue has been dominated culturally though by a major growth in Asian population, right?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't think of just Seattle as high percentage of Asian people. We do have some diversity, but in Bellevue right now, based on polls, people are identifying themselves as 43% Asian.
Wow.
Yeah, I heard over 40% of Bellevue's population is foreign born.
Yeah, that's incredible, right? That's why you have amazing Chinese restaurants and Taiwanese
Indian,
restaurants. There's a large
Korean.
amount of Indian food, good Korean food. So the food scene is completely different there. Well,
I think that instead of saying it's easy to label Bellevue as boring. My opinion is that it's more easier to label Seattle as very eclectic and unique and it's kind of like a melting pot, as you said, right? So it's like Bellevue is kind of what I'd refer to as the normal, and then Seattle's the
interesting. So Bellevue is the new normal. I completely disagree with that. There's nothing normal about Bellevue. Bellevue is very unique, right? There's no other city like Bellevue.
Around here. Yeah, correct. Around here.
I think Seattle has the benefit of having all the history, right? I think the biggest difference is that Bellevue is a newer city, but it's also a newer city that was thought of as the sister to Seattle, right? So it's not like when Seattle was a new city and there's nothing else around it and it grows that way. Bellevue has always been where maybe like people that are looking to own land, if you go back to like the 50s, there was 26,000 people in Bellevue. Yeah. Okay, so a lot of those people were buying waterfront or they're buying land, right? Where it's not a walk to work place. Now that Bellevue's grown and its boom was really in like the 90s, that was driven from tech. Tech historically has had higher incomes. It's been like a wealthier city. So with that income comes an expectation, and then that also changes the types of restaurants, the types of stores that are there, the city planning, right? So it is maybe more sterile, I'd say, but in a good, safe, fun family way, right? It's not boring, but it's not, you don't have, the grittiness that you would have, an older city anywhere in the world, right?
Yeah, yeah, and it's funny too, right? We're talking about kind of boring versus gritty.
Not
like
boring.
no, but like sterile versus edgy.
Yeah.
Like, okay, come on. Like for our Seattle folks, right? They're gonna like, so you're just labeling like us a gritty, edgy city, right? When there are obviously these incredible neighborhoods where nobody would describe it that way. So we're being very general, which is actually part of the fun and interesting part of like why there's this Bellevue versus Seattle like viewpoint, right? So. Well, let's talk like neighborhoods while we're talking about the wealthy and all that. We're making it sound like it's just an incredibly like city of wealth, and that's not true at all. Someone break down for me the different housing options and what they might cost. Maybe I'll start. So you have West Bellevue, which is average $3 million, right? So that clearly is a very affluent area, and it started the growth of the Bellevue area. Then you have areas like Bridal Trails, which is a very unique neighborhood with massive trees. You have to have actually a certain number of trees depending on the neighborhood that you're in. You can't chop them down. You've got horse trails and walking paths, and that's almost part of Kirkland, right? And that can be in the price point of $1.5 to $2 million,
or a lot more,
or more, right? Or a lot more. We're talking kind of median home price, right? But then you can go to other parts. That you can go over to like the Eastgate area, Factoria Eastgate area, right? And now we're talking about more normal prices compared to Seattle, like $1 million.
We're still finding like if a single family house in like Eastgate, for instance, it's 1.5 plus for a single family house.
Depends on the neighborhood, right? Yeah. So 1.3 million median value. You got areas like Woodridge, $1.3 million value.
So I think it's important to kind of visually think about what it looks like, right? So you've got downtown, okay, and then on the west side you've got Northwest and West Bellevue, and those two areas are incredibly expensive and very, very well established communities. You do see, especially kind of in Northwest Bellevue, you do see a lot of houses getting torn down, and then these big giant monstrosity houses kind of being built. And so as you move past Northwest Bellevue, then you get into the communities like Clyde Hill, Medina, Hunts Point, Yarrow Point. These are all where the billionaires live, essentially, right? Like the multi-millionaires and the billionaires, especially in Medina, right? And so you think of those different places. Yes, they are not technically part of Bellevue, but they live like, they kind of...
They're associated with Bellevue due to proximity, but they're their own municipalities, and you do have mansions and waterfront homes by Bill Gates and Bezos.
You're not going to have restaurants and whatnot in Bellevue or in Clyde Hill or Medina or Hunts Point or Yarrow Point. They're going to be supported by Bellevue, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I think some people kind of think of it from that perspective. And then you go on the other side of 405, and then you get into the commercial world, right, where it's a lot of warehouses and industrial, which is kind of hard to think about it being a super wealthy,
Well, it's a big city, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Every area is going to have an industrial area, right?
Totally.
Yeah,
so
it's not all just
that's like Bel-Red and
Yeah.
What's now known as the Spring District as well. Yep. But we're obviously talking about Bridal Trails and all these different areas, and they're all so different. Right. They all have a very different vibe, but it's all kind of supported by that downtown core, or surrounded by that downtown, or surrounding that downtown core.
Right. Yeah. So the major growth for sure has been driven by the tech boom, and you're close to Redmond, right, where Microsoft is. You've got all the other different tech startups that are in the area. What's the space company? Like is it SpaceX or it's the other one?
Blue Origin.
Blue Origin, right? Over there, you've got the VR part of Meta that's over in the area, Oculus. Yeah. So that's getting over into kind of red mode, but they're all proximity, right? And this is why, this is what makes quote unquote the east side important and what we're narrowing down on in Bellevue.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that is really important to why people want to live in Bellevue is because one of the primary reasons is the Bellevue School District is extremely good as well. Yeah. Really, almost all the schools on the east side are seen as highly desirable. But the Bellevue School District, year after year after year, is one of the highest rated school districts in the Puget Sound, if not, the country. One other note is the fact that, I believe it was 65% of adults in Bellevue have a bachelor's degree or more. It's really
so they're highly educated, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
It's a very highly educated area. Obviously, that leads to a more affluent lifestyle, but just it makes it so people want to raise families there and they want to surround themselves around those types of situations.
Yeah. It's sterile and boring. So I'm just kidding. I went back to that for humor, but the reality is, right, when we get clients who are relocating to the area, right, and we're trying to educate them, we need to decide what their priorities are. Right. So, I had one client recently move here to the area, right? And they go like, okay, for sure we're going to want to live on the east side. We are worried about the crime in Seattle. Right. I want biking trails. I want nature. But then he also wanted a walkable lifestyle, which is contradictory to most areas in Bellevue. It defines what walkable means to you, right? So over time, he learned that, maybe the safer areas just as a blanket whole, right? Less crime, cleaner, newer, wasn't appealing to him and his wife, right? And instead they ended up in the Green Lake Tangletown area, which is an awesome area. It had the walkability, had the bike paths, had, what felt like is a very safe area, right? You just have to explore the areas before you can decide, what area is important to you. And I would say people who are coming from like these newer cities, Justin, like you pointed out, where Bellevue is the norm, right? They may not like Seattle, and so Bellevue may be the perfect area for them.
There's just so much density in Seattle versus Bellevue, right? In Bellevue, you've got larger properties. One other thing to note is, there's so much parkland in Bellevue. There's over 100 parks in the city of Bellevue. And geographically, there's almost half of the land in Bellevue is parkland.
Wow.
Yeah, that's an interesting stat. The fact that it's that much parkland is,
but it just shows,
just definitely very appealing.
But it just shows the lack of density, right? So when you're talking about the size of Bellevue, it's geographically a very large area. And you're only talking about 150,000 people in Bellevue, whereas Seattle is maybe a little bit bigger, but it's got that kind of 800,000 people, just very, very dense.
Well, and I think too, like you said, the drive towards education culturally, that can be very important to people that are in tech, going to Bellevue, living in Bellevue. They're like, this is really important. I sold a condo in Crossroads though.
Oh yeah,
great
Let's
school
paint
district.
The picture, right? Yeah.
For I don't know, 400 something.
400 million.
$400 million. Yeah, to a billionaire. Yeah. No, but that was sold to.
It was a two-bedroom condo.
Two-bedroom condo, like somebody that wanted to be in Bellevue for the school district. Yeah. So there are solutions, but I think with a single-family home, if we're just talking single-family homes, you've got Lake Washington on one side, Lake Sammamish on the other side. So, you're going towards or away from the water in one way or another, so it's going to get expensive, right? Seattle, you can go north and south if you're trying to get single family home under $1 million for sure. But I think, median price point in Bellevue for a single family home is like 1.6. In Seattle, it's 900. But, it's not just a bunch of rich people that are living boring lives over there. There's a ton of people that are trying to get into Bellevue, but I think too with the safety, note on it is that when you're in the suburbs, any suburb in Seattle is safe as well. There's no businesses around, there's no bus lane, there's no whatever. You're in the suburbs, you're in Lake Forest Park or whatever, that's safe. So it's not like the people are safer in Bellevue and Seattle is a scary place. It's just the nature of being in a city or not, in a denser, sprawling city like Seattle is.
Yeah. I mean, it's important to know. I like Bellevue. I'm just trying to, point out like the differences, and it's not just all like clean and perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I love it though. What I love, the part of Bellevue that I like is the more like kind of walkable area of downtown. How that area has developed, the connection between downtown Bellevue and Old Town Bellevue, right where Main Street is, to also paint a picture that you can actually buy an affordable property, right?
Yeah.
We had a young single female client who wanted a safe area to live, and she bought a condo for about like, I think $525, 1-bedroom condo, 10-minute walk north up to that Main Street of Bellevue, where it still preserves that really kind of cool old town feel with boutique shops. But then you also have expensive restaurants, nice restaurants like Carmine's, which is part of the whole Il Terrazzo Carmine family, like awesome area and a favorite of Lisa's and some of her friends, especially those who live on the east side. So.
Well, and that's kind of an interesting point. I almost, I see like condo Seattle, condo Bellevue. They're a lot closer than you would think versus single family home, Seattle single family home, Bellevue, you see a big gap there. But you are able, if you want to live there, you can do it. If you can do it in Seattle, you can do it in Bellevue.
Yeah, but I think it's important to understand that, there's some areas of Bellevue that are, for the majority of people are completely unapproachable price-wise, right? Like, we're talking everything is over $3 million, $4 million, whereas you go into areas like Crossroads, right? That's an area where you can find a condo that is much, much, much more affordable. Downtown, I mean, yes, you're talking about a 1-bedroom condo in the 500-ish range.
Yeah, older building, right?
Yeah.
South of the Old Town area, right? Not downtown, the heart of downtown, where you're probably looking at maybe $750 for a 1-bedroom.
Yeah. I mean, 2 bedrooms are all mostly $1 million plus for sure. Yeah. So I think there's just a lot of different types of living, and that's where if you look geographically, it's kind of like you've got the middle portion of Bellevue, which is like kind of Bell-Red, Crossroads. It's not quite as developed, and that's opportunity for future development.
Some of the school ratings are just okay there too. They're not all like dialed in.
Yeah, but then you get on the outskirts, it's where you get into the kind of the crazier types of living.
Yeah, and the water.
Yeah, water. Surrounded by water, exactly.
Surrounded by water.
Yeah.
Totally. So when we talk about the east side and Bellevue specifically, right? What about? It's almost like people make a decision between, okay, I either want to live in Seattle or I want to live on the east side.
Correct.
Right? Kind of as a whole, they're all they're just different vibes, different folks, right? So how would you compare some of the cities that are all like right next to each other? For example, let's talk about Bellevue versus Kirkland. So for somebody considering living in either of those places.
I live in Kirkland.
Yeah.
Kirkland is like the downtown Kirkland is very small. The downtown Kirkland would be like a neighborhood corner in Seattle, right? It's very, very small. Really cute, very clean, like fun. There's
waterfront.
It's waterfront.
You can actually,
regular
people can be on the water.
They let us in every day. It's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's walkable, in a sense once you get kind of like the downtown area, but there's a ton of parks around everywhere. Very easy to get in and out of. But that compared to Bellevue, it's a baby compared to Bellevue, right? Like Bellevue has big businesses there, big corporate buildings. Kirkland doesn't really have that. Just kind of some kind of general medium-sized office buildings, and then a cute little downtown. Then if you go up to like Redmond, then it's even more different, I would say.
Yeah, well, Bellevue is a downtown hub, right? It's got a hub, big skyscrapers, right? Whereas there's nowhere else on the east side that I would truly say has that level of density.
There's no skyscrapers
No,
in any other
no.
city on the east
But
side.
you see all these different parts of the east side, like
Yeah.
Kirkland, like Redmond, like even Woodinville. You get into, even Issaquah. I mean, all these different places have little hubs or downtowns that have been created that have essentially been able to help support these cities in a more meaningful way. But Bellevue is just at a different level from a economic importance standpoint. Because it is kind of the hub of the east side, right? So when you're in Kirkland is kind of like living in, don't take this for what it is, but it's kind of like living in Ballard compared to downtown, right? They got
Yeah.
yeah, sure.
Madison Park.
Correct. That's a better example. Yeah. So, but the point is, it's not. It's such a beautiful, awesome place, but it doesn't have the hub that Bellevue has.
Yeah.
Redmond has its own hub, but it's, once again, not nearly the same size. So it has its own specific type of lifestyle, but not quite in the same way that Bellevue has.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to compare them really because, you even go a little bit further south and getting into, the south, south portion of Bellevue and where we're getting into areas like Newport Shores and Newport Hills and up into Somerset. I mean, these are areas that you have to take a car to get anywhere. But there is public transportation, but it's not like, other parts like in Kirkland. You can go ahead and get on a bike and take the whatever that Kirkland Trail is called, Kirkland Urban. Or not Kirkland Urban, but
Urban
the
corridor.
the
Kirkland
corridor.
Yeah.
Thank you. You can take that almost anywhere, right?
Yeah.
And so it's very accessible. Whereas you get into Bellevue, these are areas like the walk score is very low.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
different types of living.
Yeah. Well, Microsoft is definitely for sure the biggest employer on the east side,
Correct.
right? And so people who work for Microsoft can live in all over the place for sure, right? So Bellevue is kind of right next to it,
Yep.
right? And then you've got Redmond goes all the way into like actual real farmland out in the middle of kind of nowhere. But
Yep.
there you get like massively big estates and, you get more money, more land for your money than
Yeah.
you do in Bellevue. But it doesn't
more rural.
appreciate the same, right?
Yeah.
I've got a client who said, "Oh my God, I wish I bought my $700,000 house in like West Bellevue 20 years ago because there were $700,000 houses in West Bellevue." He goes, "That would be worth like $6 million."
Wow.
Yeah, and in Redmond, it appreciated like 2.4. So
Pretty significant.
that's a pretty significant difference.
Yeah, and once again, it's just kind of more rural.
Yeah.
Like Bridal Trails is an area that we all know, and
love
it's such a beautiful, beautiful area.
Yeah.
But that is a very, very rural environment
Oh yeah, they actually ride
in the
horses.
middle of the city, right? It's right there. You're right in
yeah.
between Kirkland and Bellevue, and it's very close to downtown Bellevue, and that's what makes it so desirable.
Yeah.
Those properties are worth ridiculous sums of money, whereas you
The
get out
true
into
bridal trails with the acreage
Yeah.
and the big estates.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And then there's other parts of bridal trails that are more residential.
Yeah. There's
yeah.
far more residential homes that are affordable in the more like 1.5 to 2 million price range in bridal trails than some of the, like, if you don't really know bridal trails, you might go, oh, bridal trails is only big estates with horse properties.
Sure.
Yeah,
Right.
not true. But it is amazing how you can have that little neighborhood
Right.
that has like horse trails and horse farms
Totally.
right next to downtown Kirkland, downtown Bellevue.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think for like context, we should talk about again, like how big Bellevue is from an employer standpoint versus like Seattle, right? Because I think the reason I say that is because if you look at headline after headline, you're thinking that, oh my God, Seattle is just barely a blip on the radar anymore, and it's all about Bellevue, right?
Yeah.
So I pulled some stats which I think I find pretty interesting. Like, for example, Amazon. What would you guess out of the 52,000 employees that work for Amazon locally, how many are in Bellevue versus how many are in Seattle?
Let's see, $30,000.
I will say 8,000 Bellevue.
Okay, Winner, Justin gets dinner.
Wow.
Yeah.
Egg on my face.
Close. Yeah, only 7,000
Yeah.
at this point, right? And probably plans for future growth and realignment, maybe. But yeah, they're still heavily invested in Seattle, 45,000. But if you look at headline after headline, it's like, more jobs being, moved to downtown Bellevue than otherwise, right?
But I think that's obviously is somewhat politically motivated in some respects because Bellevue is providing opportunities for businesses to get tax incentives to come to the east side, and Amazon's one of those businesses that yes, they want to have their business surrounded by tech workers, which clearly there is on both sides of the water, but it doesn't necessarily mean Amazon's going to shrink in Seattle.
Yeah.
It just more means that, hey, maybe instead of continuing to develop in Seattle, they're going to want to develop in a place like Bellevue.
Yeah, it's definitely more business friendly.
Yeah.
That's for sure, right?
Yeah.
And it is can get challenging to deal with just some of the kind of Seattle kind of politics and the way they deal with like tax issues and some of the homeless challenges. So there's definitely a bigger expectation in Seattle that these big corporate companies contribute to ensure more equality in the area, right? Because you have a lot of lower income people who have needs. While in Bellevue, at least I'm not aware of it as much. You don't quite see that as much.
Right.
And for updated figures, it's now 14,000 employees.
Oh, getting closer.
So about 36,000 in all, 50,000 in Seattle, but down from 60,000 in 2020. Other big employers of interest, right, are T-Mobile, 7,800 employees,
Well,
Meta.
they have their headquarters actually. T-Mobile's headquarters take up a big chunk of Eastgate, right? And so that's actually where a lot of people from T-Mobile, they end up buying houses up in Lakemont. They end up buying houses in Somerset, in close proximity to that Eastgate area.
Yeah, exactly. And they've been headquartered there for a while.
Long time, yeah.
Right? You've got Meta,
Yeah.
which is now 5,400 employees in the Spring District, which we should probably talk about here. And then in comparison to Seattle, they've got 2,600 employees. And then Google is not in Bellevue. Google is in Kirkland, and Google is in downtown Seattle and has a massive presence in Kirkland. And you got that nice Kirkland campus. But yeah, I think for context, a lot of people think Bellevue is just like massively blowing up, and while it is relative to Seattle, it's still a little blip in the radar in many respects.
Right. Yeah, except for Meta, of course, which Meta is certainly creating a bigger footprint there, and to dive into that a little bit, there's reasons why Meta is doing that, right? They're doing that because there is a portion of Bellevue that is primed for redevelopment, primed for a company like Meta to essentially create an urban village. And so, we're talking specifically about the Spring District, which is, kind of part of the WREG community. But, Spring District is really, really popular for development because of the fact that they ended up putting light rail through there, which goes and continues to Redmond. But there's two stops, one specifically right beside the Meta kind of campus there. And the amount of apartments and, residential units that they're putting in there is very, very high. And so it's going to continue. You're probably going to have more of like a true urban village type of feel and environment that is surrounding the transportation hub there, right? I kind of equate it to what I've seen happen in Vancouver, Canada over the years, where you have what they call the SkyTrain, and the SkyTrain station was here, and then all of a sudden you see high rises and development, kind of like an Asian influenced community type of situation. And I feel like we're going to see more of that happen in Bellevue, especially in that Spring District. It's really going to become a very popular place for people to be.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it every time there's a light rail station stop.
Right. Totally.
The point is you're trying to provide transportation for people to go to their jobs, right? And what no better place to actually put housing so they can just walk right to the light rail, right? To have that expand. Yeah. The Spring District is interesting. Like I heard over 10,000 units, and it's 36 acres, and
Currently.
Currently by 2028, it'll have workspaces for 13,000 workers. So I mean that's obviously a very substantial amount. And then there's Wilburton, which apparently is part of this major area, which used to be kind of that commercial area, maybe the Bell Red kind of Wilburton area, right? Commercial area. And now they're talking about building what's called the Grand Connection, a signature pedestrian bridge that goes from Maidenbower Bay Park, right, West Bellevue, all the way through downtown, across the 405, and then heading into this Wilburton East Rail part of Bellevue.
Well,
It's like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, what do we have similarly to that here? We don't really have anything like that, but you've got Burke-Gilman Trail, obviously,
Right.
which has been
That'd be the
around
biggest
forever
connector, yeah.
as an easy connector. Yeah, but I mean, that's pretty cool. That's intended to be done by 2030.
Yeah.
Thinking of, right, the future and
Right.
how there's massive change and development happening.
Yeah, I think it just shows the potential that Bellevue has for continued development.
Yeah.
You know, because it isn't as dense as some other areas, and you know, there's this huge center portion of Bellevue that has, you know, a lot of industrial, commercial warehouses, and you know, I just feel like you're going to perhaps see some of those businesses move a little bit further out, cash in on what they've got as very affluent land prices.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just continue to see like what it's going to be interesting to see what 30 years from now Bellevue continues to look like. Downtown is going to develop a little bit differently, and you know, but you're not going to see a lot of these very affluent parts of Bellevue change much. You're going to see maybe some houses get torn out and nice houses get built.
Yeah.
But you know, what is the long-term vision of Bellevue look like? And that's where I think that Spring District and Bell Red is going to be a huge.
a lot of the commercial space will
Totally.
change for sure.
Totally.
Yeah, and for sure, just like in Seattle, right? The issue is going to be not enough housing, and there is a housing shortage over there, right? And it's not sustainable to only have homes that average 1.5 to 1.75 million, right? And then you bring everybody who has to work in the area from out of the area because they can't afford to live there.
Right.
That's not sustainable. So I think they're for sure thinking about that. So you're definitely going to see some changes. That's why those additional housing units that are more affordable are coming into the area. You know, they're starting to see some of the same kind of challenges that like maybe were in Seattle maybe like 15, 20 years ago before things started changing, right? There's a need for more shelters, right? I have a friend in the area who is not, like, to be honest, right, not happy about a shelter that came up in the area. So he's starting to have some, you know, kind of people or crime in the area that he maybe is attributing to that, right? So, yeah, I mean, they're going through big city changes as well, too. This is a cool thing, though. They said they want to be net zero by 2050. So net zero emissions and carbon neutral actually by 2040.
As a city?
As a city. Mm-hmm. Yeah, transitioning buildings to renewable energy and efficiency, encouraging sustainable mobility, reduce vehicle trips, right? All the public transportation. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty cool initiative in addition to the Spring District, you know, the growth of light rail.
Yeah.
Well, there's not like a lot of manufacturing over there. I feel like if a city could do it there. But I mean, when you drive through these areas that we're talking about, Crossroads and Bell Red and all that, I mean, you can just see it. You know, there's massive parking lots for like, you know, a coffee shop or something. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, this is definitely going to get eaten up by something at some point. You know, it's the same thing happened to, you know, anywhere in Seattle, any city that's growing. But you can see where it's like, okay, what is the highest best use for this land? You know, it's not going to be massive parking lots and stuff. I mean, it is awesome to go over there and you can park anywhere, but that will end up changing at some point, just like it did in Seattle.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of parking, downtown Bellevue parking is very expensive.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
like any downtown, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's kind of wrap up with some, I don't know, rapid fire type questions, right? So get ready, right? Okay. What's the thing that sucks the most about Bellevue?
When somebody crashes on 520,
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
Okay.
that sucks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because you're stuck.
Yeah.
Even though 520 is better, but
So
yeah.
the 520 connects Seattle and Bellevue,
Which
and
that bridge-
Yarrow Point and Hunts Point and Medina.
Right. When I'm going to Yarrow Point,
There you
get
go.
on my helicopter.
Yeah. Okay.
I can honestly say I can't think of anything that sucks.
Boo.
I know. I'm just being serious. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very well thought out community. I think that
Yeah.
there's obviously certain aspects of it that could, perhaps
didn't
be
like
improved.
the
Kenji
answer.
does not like
Kenji
that.
does
He's
not
like,
like
Kenji
that.
didn't like
Bellevue
the
fanboy,
answer.
JD. Say
All
something.
right, that's okay, Bill.
Yeah.
Justin loves Bellevue. It's a perfect
No,
city.
I mean, sucks is a hard word. so
Okay.
there you go.
What is disappointing about Bellevue? What is less than ideal?
Yeah, I feel like
Got to give an answer.
I
some
actually
kind of
do
negative
feel like
answer.
public transportation has absolutely been more important, but I feel like it's kind of was an afterthought in some respects. Bellevue was developed with car use in mind, and so now they have that one light rail station that's gone through.
Yeah.
But it would be really nice to be able to have some additional light rail stations that we're able to kind of branch out and go more up the east side. No, I'm just saying, like, for me, I only take the light rail if I'm going to like a Kraken game or something like that. But there's a large part of the community that, hey, we could go ahead and alleviate some of the traffic concerns that we had if there was more of an infrastructure there in Bellevue.
Yeah.
It's decent, but it's not
I think
great.
we're all like talking about kind of the same thing, right? Is in a big growing city that's connecting a lot of different tech hubs in the area to Redmond, to Seattle, and people commuting from far away because they can't afford to live in these expensive cities.
Yeah.
Traffic sucks. 405 isn't built for it. They're trying to expand the area, so we're catching up as a city to the more well thought out areas that in other states that have better public transportation. So
Less density.
Less density, yeah, exactly. So I think that's the thing that kind of sucks. Sure. Okay, what is the for somebody relocating to Bellevue or the area? What piece of advice would you give them?
Open your wallet. No, I'm just kidding. I would say, I think the piece of advice would be that if you're looking for walkability, like your client, right? There's great schools. There's good schools in Seattle too. Yes, there's good restaurants in Bellevue. There's good restaurants in Seattle, but the walkability aspect of it just isn't quite the same as it would be in a lot of different neighborhoods in Seattle. Yeah. So for people that want that lifestyle, where it's not about getting on a bus or a light rail, it's about walking out of their door and going, to go wherever. It's just not quite as easy. Even if you're in downtown Bellevue, you're going out into a planned newer city. It's not the same as walking out in Pioneer Square or Capitol Hill or Fremont, right? Yeah. It's just a different feel. So that thing I would say would be something to consider. Other than
awesome. I feel like if someone's considering the idea of Bellevue as a city to live in, you really want to understand that each of the don't go to downtown Bellevue and assume that you know Bellevue, because there's so many different styles of living there. It's very, very desirable for people who have families that are looking for really good schools and in close proximity to work, right? So that's what makes Bellevue really, really appealing. But you can live in so many different parts of it. That's why you got to speak to us and help you understand why one area may make more sense for you than another. And price point obviously has a big part to do with it. Yeah. But there's just so many different styles of living you can live there in Bellevue.
Totally. Yeah. I think for anybody relocating to any city, let alone Bellevue or any other area, right? What are your priorities, right? You can just go kind of down the list, right? How much space do you need in your house? Do you need land? What is your maximum commute that you want, right? Are schools important at this time, right? Where do your friends live? If you've got friends in the area, and are you now willing to give up the fact that you used to live 5 minutes from your friends and now you're going to live 35 minutes from your friends? I tell you, your friends aren't going to come visit you.
Yeah, that's 100%.
I hear that every single time from my clients, and it doesn't mean it's a bad thing, but it's definitely harder to get people to come visit you if you're far away. So it's not necessarily just all about Bellevue, but like Justin said, there are a lot of different parts of Bellevue too. that have completely different vibes in neighborhoods. So,
You go see both.
Yeah.
Go take a tour in Bellevue, take a tour in Seattle.
yeah. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order, guys?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we hope that was beneficial, guys. We covered a lot of things. As you can see, Bellevue is a pretty awesome city. And it's a major economic factor for Seattle. And you know what? It's literally 12 minutes across the bridge.
Yeah.
So if that, right?
Right.
Like it is, we got what, 2-mile bridges?
Yeah.
If that. Yeah. So
A lot of
it's
people
very
working-
close.
Yeah.
Very close.
Yeah.
The funny thing though is that, depending on where you get entrenched, you've got Seattle people who are like, you know what, Bellevue is way too far. And especially if you're going to go out and have restaurants and drinks and you need an Uber back and forth.
Yeah.
And you add $100 to your bill right there, right?
Yeah.
And then you got Bellevue people who won't even come across the
Yeah.
water to Seattle. So both are great in their own right. It just depends on what you're looking for. But they're very close, actually.
Yeah, very close, but
Yeah.
it is funny. I don't know for sure if we mentioned this, but people who love Seattle, and people who love the East Side love the East Side,
Right.
Yeah.
right? And it's not common to see
Right.
people who
Yeah.
love both.
I'm the flip flopper.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with
Yeah,
it.
you
Yeah,
know
totally.
what? And
But
it's-
it just
and
shows.
it's funny too, right? The East Side, you had to call it the East Side because like they all have to like work together to
Totally.
kind of gang up on Seattle. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
All right, guys. Well, we're looking forward to catching you on the next episode. Hope you found this valuable. Right? If you do need some advice on buying or selling, relocating to the area, we got your back. Reach out anytime and give us a like if you found some value in it. Thanks.